Hello, welcome to Ms. Peepers Reading Corner. I'm Katrina, aka Ms. Peepers. Let's talk about AI chatbots. ChatGPT, an AI language learning model, launched for public use in November of 2022, causing many people to frantically search Google for the phrase language learning model because no one really knew what it was yet. According to an article published last month by OpenAI, which is the company that owns ChatGPT, 700 million people use this tool each week now for all sorts of things, such as writing help, image generation, and research. Now, if you read the title of this video, don't panic. I have not joined the dark side. I didn't actually try to ban any books, but I did step into the mind of a tech-savvy censor. I hope you appreciate the things that I do for you, the viewer, and if you do, you can thank me by liking and subscribing. 2 years ago, Iowa passed legislation requiring that school districts remove any materials that were not age-appropriate, a very subjective term, or that contained descriptions or visual depictions of a sex act, which is less subjective. School districts did not have a lot of time to comply. One school district addressed this time crunch by using ChatGPT, and they asked it a question. Do any of the following books or book series contain explicit or sexual scenes? This is the same ChatGPT, by the way, which earlier this year contributed, along with other AI tools, to a 15-title summer reading list that only included 5 real books on it. I'm hearing too recently that librarians are getting an increase in patrons asking for books that don't exist because they got them from an AI generated list. And I hasten to point out that technology typically improves over time. So in 2022, it would have been even less accurate. Now, when an AI tool provides something as fact that is in fact not real, we call it a hallucination. That's the technical term for it. As a result of Iowa using ChatGPT to review their catalog, 19 books were removed from the 7th to 12th grade school library, including The Color Purple, Handmaid's Tale, Beloved, and Friday Night Lights. The first 3 of these books, which I have read, do include sexual content. I have not read Friday Night Lights, but H.G. Bissinger, who is the author of that book, said in an interview that there is no sexual content. And quite frankly, I'm inclined to believe him over AI because, he wrote the book and all. I don't know, he was there. But even for the ones that do have sex, are you really trying to tell me that a 12th grader, that's someone who is 17 or 18 years old approximately, that they should not read something just because it has sex in it? What are you protecting them from? The fact that sex exists? 17 and 18-year-olds know, my friend. They are aware. And at that age in the US, they're about to vote for the first time. Would you like a voter who thinks that women should have rights and that rape is bad? Because those are 2 of the messages that you will find in books like The Color Purple, The Handmaid's Tale, and Beloved. And I understand that no one can read an entire library full of books in, well, really any time period, but particularly not in the 30 days that they were given to vet them for content. But certainly a group of library employees, maybe with a volunteer or 2, could split up 19 books and at least skim them to know what content is in there. Am I missing something here? I mean, I'm not a librarian, so truly, if I am missing something, please tell me. And look, I know that librarians are overworked, they are underpaid, and the real villains here are the legislators who think that blanket bans are a good idea, but there's gotta be a better way to approach this. And I'm coming from my cushy recliner in my home. I do not have to deal with this head on. So it's easy for me to say this, but I would be inclined to go as slow as possible because, quite frankly, this is a ridiculous law, but I know they have to comply. I know it's not my job that would be on the line. So everyone has to pick their battles. So this is just an impossible situation. But reading about this event recently made me wonder and also worry a bit about what would happen if censors started to use ChatGPT or other tools to generate lists that they would then take to fill in the challenge forms? Because what I've noticed, especially in the past year or 2, people are challenging huge lists of books. And often, and this has always been the case, but like even more so now, often they haven't read those books. They don't really know what's in them. Or they'll say, well, I don't like A Handmaid's Tale, so let's ban everything by Margaret Atwood just to be safe because we don't like her politics. So let's just take all of her books off the shelves. And they don't ask about what content is in there and the context of that content so that you can actually understand whether that book is appropriate for a given audience or not. So what if you decided to use AI tools to make book banning more efficient? What would happen? Now, I'm not an expert on AI, and that makes me, I think, like most people, quite frankly. I've used ChatGPT before. I have a very basic understanding of how it works, and I read the same scary articles as everybody else. Negative titles get more clicks. Did it work, by the way? I'd love to know if you clicked on this video just so you could get mad at me for banning books. I'm also curious to see if anyone hits the comments without watching the video. So I thought to myself, how would I find as broad a list as possible of books to ban without sullying my eyes with the written word? I'd go to the internet, right? And now we have tools. I'd go to the intelligent internet. And I want you to know that the intelligent internet surprised me. I took a screen capture of a conversation that I had with ChatGPT, and we're going to watch this together. For reference, in case this matters to you, I used the free version of ChatGPT and I was not logged in. Now, as you can see, my first question was a little bit too vague, so I had to get to the point. And yeah, maybe I was a little snarky here, but let's be honest, the masks are coming off, especially online. I was pleasantly surprised to learn, though, that ChatGPT is woke. If I were actually the person I was pretending to be in this conversation, I would probably be a bit ticked off, but I'm not, so I wasn't. I really like this approach that ChatGPT took here to educate the user rather than just going along with whatever I wanted. It makes me feel a lot better, so I had to thank it at the end. And yes, I know that ChatGPT is not a person, but I still like to be polite to machines. Maybe I read too much sci-fi. But when they inevitably take over, I'm hoping the machines will remember and they'll be merciful. So that was really cool, right? I truly did not know what to expect when I started to ask ChatGPT for help. I thought it would actually help me. I thought it would just go along with whatever I had to say. But instead it said, no, I'm not going to help you censor books. If you're discussing this in an academic sense, maybe we'll talk about it. But if you're actually trying to do this, no, I'm not going to help you. Now, I could have lied. Well, I mean, actually, I did lie. I don't have a child about whom to be worried, and even if I did have a child, I would not try to protect them from the fact that gay people exist because, like, quite frankly, that's stupid. I'm gonna say it, it's stupid. But the fact that someone has programmed this tool to say no, to stand up for something moral, that's kind of amazing. However, it also means that someone could program an AI tool, and possibly has, to do the opposite. So while we're happy that we got this result, we should also remember that AI is exactly what we build it to be. Anyway, as I thought about my conversation with ChatGPT, I decided to take a different approach. And I did not screen capture this one, so we're just going to talk about it. So what I did, I exported my book catalog from Goodreads so that I could ask ChatGPT the same question that the Iowa librarians did. Do any of the following books or book series contain explicit or sexual scenes? The results were pretty interesting. First, I was still not logged into ChatGPT, so I was limited in how many books that I could give it in the initial run, and so I gave it about 50. Then I remembered that I do in fact have an account. I don't use ChatGPT very often, so I logged in. It's still a free account. I don't know if that matters or not, and by the way, I'm not sponsoring any of this. I'm not advocating for a particular tool. It's just easily available. So I logged in and I was able to upload the entire list of books that I have read that are logged in Goodreads, which is 355 books, to which ChatGPT replied, "That's quite a list," before giving me the breakdown. Now, for the most part, the results felt pretty reasonable to me, but I noticed a few things, differences between the logged in and logged out conversations that gave me pause about the accuracy of the results. Even though my question was the same, the resulting categories were different. Books with explicit or sexual content versus books/series with explicit or sexual scenes. Similar, but not the same. And then books with mild or implied sexual content versus books with sexual themes, not explicit. Again, similar, but not the same. And when you're talking to a human, you could probably easily conclude that we're talking about the same thing when we have these categories with slightly different titles. But when you're talking to a computer, computers tend to be more precise about exactly what you're giving them. And so it does concern me a bit that ChatGPT may not have been defining those two categories exactly the same. In fact, I know it wasn't, because then I looked at the results. Now, the two book lists were not exactly the same. As I said, one was shorter. So here are a couple of books that were on both lists, but that had different results depending on whether or not I was logged in. This is just a login. It's both the free version of ChatGPT. I know that the paid version does some extra stuff. I don't have that, so we didn't use it. The Circle by Dave Eggers. Without login, it was put into the mild category with a note, contains some adult/sexual themes in the context of surveillance society. Okay, fair enough. With the login, it ended up in the explicit category with the note, contains sexual scenes, not extremely graphic, but explicit. The sexual scene that it's referring to is one in which May, our main character, has sex with someone that she works with, only to learn that he has filmed it. And because the Circle believes in full transparency and never deleting anything, he cannot delete the footage that is in the Circle's cloud. And when she goes to pretty high up in the company, she cannot get that footage deleted. And so it is this violation in the surveillance society. So I don't recall it being what I would consider to be a graphic sexual scene, but they definitely have sex, and there are some descriptions of what happened, but nothing like pornographic in my personal opinion. I would put it in the mild category personally, but again, where I would categorize it is less important to me in this moment than the fact that the same tool put it in different places based on whether or not I was logged into the system. Sold by Patricia McCormick. Without the login, the book was placed in the explicit category with the note, contains disturbing sexual content, child trafficking and rape, explicit but handled sensitively. I agree with that for what it's worth. With the login, it was put in the not explicit category with a note, deals with sexual exploitation/trafficking, but written for YA, so not graphically explicit. There is a scene in Sold when Lakshmi, who is our main character, has first come to the brothel and she refuses to prostitute herself. And so the woman who's running the brothel drugs her and sends a client into her without her permission. So yes, that is rape, that is child trafficking. And Lakshmi describes her perspective of what is happening through her like drug-addled state. And it is incredibly disturbing, but explicit. So while I agree that it is handled sensitively, it was, in my mind, explicit. I don't think it should be banned, to be really clear. Reasonable people might be able to disagree on whether it's explicit, quote unquote, or not, but I still think that it is worrying that two versions of this tool put it into two different places. The third one is Flamer by Mike Curato. So without the login, it was placed in the explicit category with a note, contains some sexual content and themes of identity and bullying. And I find it interesting that themes of identity is lumped into the explicitness of the category. This is a book about a teenage boy who is coming to the realization that he is gay. And so themes of identity, that's not the part that's explicit. There's some sexual content in it for sure. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. With the login, ChatGPT missed Flamer the first time. I followed up and ChatGPT put it in the not explicit category with a note, identity, attraction, crude jokes, no explicit scene. Whether or not you agree with the categories, first of all, it is a bit concerning that the categories are different depending on what persona asked the question, but also it is objectively a mistake that I included Flamer in that longer list and ChatGPT did not address it. So when I called out that it was missing, the tool did ask me if I wanted it to check for more mistakes, so I said yes. And when it did, it called out a list of missed titles with their categories. 3 of the books on that list are books that I have never read before and that were not on my list. They're not even in my catalog, so it's not like I made a filtering error on my export. Like, I do not own these books. I have never read these books, which means they are not logged in Goodreads under my account. So that's a hallucination. The other one was a similar title and a different author, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. ChatGPT is known for its hallucinations, and I'm just glad the 3 mystery books were real books, because I did double check that. But since I haven't read them, I can't confirm whether I agree with the system's categorization. The similarly titled book is, to me, the most concerning. Now, my book is The Outsider by Stephen King. ChatGPT flagged it as The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. Now, I've not read Hinton's novel. I have read King's. King's novel has a lot of gore. At the opening of the book, he describes a crime scene with the body of a child who has been murdered in a sexually violent way. So I would flag that book as having some explicit sexual content. The Outsiders, again, I have not read it. From a little bit of sleuthing outside of AI, from what I can tell, there doesn't seem to be sexually explicit content in it. But if you have read it, let me know if I'm wrong about that. And it was marked as such by ChatGPT. But here's the thing. That's an easy enough mistake to make. I could see 2 humans, one talking about each of these books, getting very confused because they are very different books. But thinking you're talking about the same thing. And so depending on how the results come to you, you could potentially mark Stephen King's The Outsider as perfectly fine for any audience, which it is not. Or you could mark The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton as graphic and explicit and gory and horrific, which, from what I can tell, not having read it, it is not. And because this one mistake is in here, it makes me question everything. You've got to go through the entire list, so you cannot trust it. And we're coming back to Friday Night Lights, right? Which was taken off of the shelves for sexual content when the author says there is no sexual content. And he specifically writes books that do not have sexual content. And because those books were not read, but in fact that the librarian trusted the AI, there was no check at the end to say, oh wait, this one was misfiled, this one was miscategorized, we can keep this one on the shelf and still comply with this ridiculous law saying that we shouldn't tell anyone about sex, it doesn't exist. Another strange result was the book Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin, which was only in the logged in list. It was not in my initial shorter list of 50. But it was listed on both the explicit list with the note contains sexual relationships, sometimes explicitly described, and on the non-explicit list with the note sexual relationships, somewhat explicit. So you're telling me it's not explicit, but also somewhat explicit, and also it's on both lists, but it's one book. Which is it? ChatGPT, which is it? The first rule of ChatGPT is never trust ChatGPT. I could go on, but I think I've made my point. This is a one-person experiment, and so, take it with a grain of salt. Your mileage may vary, but I do worry that if I personally found so many inconsistencies with my own experience, that if you were to multiply that across hundreds, thousands, millions of people, who knows how skewed and disparate the results would become. And it's important to remember too that ChatGPT and other learning language models take information and learn from their users, as well as the information that they can find on the internet. Humans are flawed, which means that the technology that we build is also flawed. And humans have bias, which means that the technology we build also has bias, particularly AI. And I'm not saying that we should never use AI, that we should chuck all of our technology into the bin and go live in a cave somewhere with no lights and only books, although the no lights thing doesn't sound great, but the only books does. Instead, we should be aware of the limitations of the tools that we use and always check the output before you use it to make decisions, to build presentations, or to write an article with a list of summer reading. Or we could just find ourselves a paper and ink book to read. That's often less complicated. But let me know your thoughts in the comments on this subject. Am I blowing this way out of proportion? Am I catastrophizing? And either way, regardless of your opinion, please be polite to each other in the comments, and to me would be nice, but particularly to each other. Either way, please keep reading, and I will see you in the next one.